Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us, Minister Mostyn. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us, everybody, for this regular council meeting, special council meeting. My bad. And thank you for joining us, Minister Mostyn. We'll just jump right into it. I know that you have something you'd like to address. We have you as a delegation, so if I could have a motion to adopt the agenda, please.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
That's good.
Thank you, Councillor Hanchar and Councillor Slager. Again, thank you, Minister Mostyn. We had a very busy weekend. As I know you're well aware, we were all on Zoom, multitasking if we had to be, but we were there. So I guess the topic of the day is the Better Build program. So if you want to go ahead, please do.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Thank you, Council, for inviting me tonight. I'm happy to be here remotely at your council meeting. And I really appreciate the opportunity you're presenting tonight. Yes, you're absolutely right. You had a very, very busy weekend this weekend. And I know that this was one of the topics on the agenda. And really what I was hoping to do tonight is just sort of lay out where we're at. The Better Build program is really the goal. But right now what we're trying to do is get enabling legislation through the House that would allow us to build a program with municipalities. Your Worship, I'm not sure if you've seen the letter, but I did send a letter to AYC President Gord Kern on Sunday afternoon, just making known my commitment to work with municipalities to make this program a reality. There is no obligation on municipalities. If the enabling legislation passes the House, we'll plan to bring it next week if we can. If the enabling legislation passes the House, then we will start to work immediately on the working group that I proposed to hammer out the details to make sure that municipalities have the resources they need to administer the program. And the program doesn't exist until the regulations are set. I've committed to working with municipalities to develop the regulations, and then and negotiating with municipalities the terms, acceptable terms that would enable them to take on this program. So at this point, there's no commitment on behalf of Watson Lake to do the program. What I'm looking for is basically support for the principles of the program. And what it would be an ultra low interest loan program for both residents and commercial property owners. Residential homeowners would be eligible for up to $50,000 of low interest loan. That would be loans offered at the Bank of Canada lending rate. That's the cheapest money in the country, for a term of up to 15 years. That would enable them to do new doors, windows, new insulation, wrap their homes, whatever it was. For commercial businesses, the value is $100,000 and the same interest rate, which at the moment is at 0.25. So that's it's almost a free loan to people that would be then tied to the property and paid off as a local improvement charge. So that's the term of the property. What it gives to municipalities is tangible action on climate change that we've been talking about and hearing about at COP26. So it also reduces the cost of heating people's homes in your community. It will provide, I was just talking to Minister Pillay, Your Worship, and he said, tell Chris that this is a good program and will bring lots of work to your community and keep all your contractors busy in the coming years. So that's his words, not mine, but he's not wrong. This program would bring work to your community. It would lower the cost of heating people's homes, and it would actually make tangible efforts towards reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. It would actually, by doing so, actually lessen pressure on our hydro grid, allowing us to not burn as much diesel and not use as much hydro because our homes would be more efficient. There are lots of benefits to this program. I understand there's some concerns. I am willing to work through these concerns to ensure that municipalities can handle the administrative aspect of this program. And I've been talking to communities. I have now support from from Haines Junction. We're going to see what happens with Dawson, but I just heard from the mayor, and the mayor is very supportive of this in Dawson City. I've spoken to Mayor Bodie in Carmax, and his council passed a resolution last week. He told me that's in support of this program. So there's a number of communities coming on board. I've sent the material to Faro. Mr. Mayor Bowers and Faro is looking over the material and is going to be talking to his council about it. He too thinks it's a good program. I have the support of the Yukon Federation of Labor, all three chambers of commerce, the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society is on board. I have a number of people who are just looking forward to administering this program. You and I have spoken about it, Your Worship, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Yeah, thanks for being with us short term. Thanks, or short notice, and thanks for the update. And we, AYC, the discussion was that it is a great initiative for the Better Build. I'm sure you heard the concerns, and I'll just give each, I don't know how you're doing for time, Mr. Mostyn, you mentioned yesterday.
Sure, this is important, and I'll make as much time as I can for you. 10 minutes at minimum.
Okay. So I'll go around the table and ask councillors if they have any questions, if that's all right.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go ahead first. I don't really have a question, just to echo what Mayor Urban said, that we do think this is a good program. It's going to benefit in a lot of ways. The main issue is the administrative burden on the municipality itself. So that's where the majority, I think, of our concerns are coming from. So yeah, thanks.
Councillor Slager.
My concern is that, like most government programs, they work at a snail's pace. So from my understanding, you have to get someone to do an energy assessment before you even start anything, correct? Before you can even apply to any loans to fix anything in your house, you need to have an assessment done on your home, correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yes, you have to have your home assessed, and it would be the Department of Community Services that would be hiring and deploying the assessors to do that work.
Okay. My worry is that you order an assessment in January and it happens in the following November. By the time someone actually gets around to coming down to Watson Lake to do it, and you know what I mean? If there's any way that they could have like an assessor on staff or something like that's their like dedicated person just doing that, so that there isn't this tremendous backlog and people can actually take advantage of it. Councillor,
your comments tonight are absolute music to my ears. I've heard so many people saying, slow this thing down, slow this thing down. You're the first one who's accused me of going too slow, and I want to thank you for that. And so I really appreciate that. I hear exactly what you're saying, and yes, if I think what we have to do is discuss this, the working group, and see what resources municipalities would need or would like to see to help smooth the deployment of this program. And that having assessors on board is a good one. Now, the capacity issues that you're feeling within your municipality and that have been brought up this evening are ones that are being felt by First Nation and the territorial government. All governments are feeling this. All businesses are feeling this. So we have to accommodate those things. But we want to get 2,000 homes retrofitted to reduce their costs over the next 8 years. And so my goal is to have this program starting to be rolled out in 2022. So we have lots of time to actually do the retrofits. And I hear your concerns, Councillor, and I'm more than happy to try to address them through the working group I've committed to holding as of December 3rd, if this thing passes the House. And the difficulty is if it doesn't pass the House, this program dies and it won't be available. Like we can't bring it back until several years in the future. So if this vote fails, that's the end of it. And that's why your support and that of the other municipalities is so critical to the success of this program. The enabling legislation, we can build this program together going forwards. And that's what I've committed to do.
A lot of places to assess over 8 years. Just doing the rough math, that's one a day down there. Over 8 years, 365 days, 2,000. That's one one assessment every 2 days plus travel. How many staff are you thinking you're going to have dedicated to reach those goals?
Well, these are all the details. I want to get the legislation through the House before we start working these things out. Until we do, there's no sense in doing it. We're going to have to hire people. We're going to have people assigned to do this. And we need the legislation in place in order to do that. Until that legislation passes, everything's in a holding pattern, waiting to finalize the details of this with municipalities and get it rolled out.
Who would cover the cost of the assessment and the paperwork side, the YG or the person applying for the assessment? Yukon what?
The Yukon government covering that cost. We have to work out some of these details once the enabling legislation passes, but it's YG, and we'll see how those costs are recovered from the homeowner, if they are at all. We have to work some of those details out. And that's part of the work that'll have to happen this winter. It's a good question, though.
Danina, do you have a question?
Hello, yes. My name is Danina. So we actually just did have an energy assessment done on our home. The cost was like $50, $52.50, and we applied for that in June, and they came out in November. So we've just had it done. They were only able to do 3 in a day when they were here. So I feel like it's going to take a lot of time to be able to get this program up and running. Definitely, I feel like so you have a specific amount that you're entitled to, but right now with the building costs being so high, I fear that a lot of that's going to be gobbled up in the cost that it just takes to have your place, brought up to code in respect to your energy assessment. So that's definitely something to be concerned about, as well as just supplies. Like in the communities, we don't have the supplies that they have in Whitehorse. So that definitely can potentially put a damper on things. And I also, sure, this government really wants this, but who's to say that the next government isn't going to buy into that? And that's the other concern, because I've seen a lot of government programs that have been really, really worthwhile programs. And when another government has come into play, then those programs die. Even though, like I said, there was an accessibility grant that the Yukon Housing had out for seniors or people who needed to have access to their homes so that they could age in place longer, and that program died. So that's the one that I'm talking about in particular. So there's some concerns there. Like you say, it's over 8 years, but I don't know how it plays out with another government. I don't know if you can explain that to me, if this is like written in stone.
Yeah, Councillor, first of all, you've just cut our timelines down by a third, because the assessors are doing 3 a day. So that helps your colleague, as to your colleague's point. But yeah, I do.
Oh. Just took them 6 months to get here, that's all.
You froze there, sir, Minister Mostyn.
Are we all frozen?
Oh, don't face good.
We probably don't have,
Dale's moving.
Yeah,
maybe we lost internet, I don't know.
no, Dale's on, everybody's we're moving.
Oh,
Be a white horse.
oh, I'm on tonight.
Okay. You're frozen in time, sir.
Yeah.
Should we restart?
Okay. I'll just say maybe sign in and sign out.
We lost him anyways, he's gone.
You might be doing that.
He left, boot in.
I actually do have 2 other questions too.
You have another question?
Yeah, we'll let Dale go first.
We'll just give him a minute to try and sign in again. And okay, he says he's coming. Dale has a question that I will ask as soon as Danina's done. But one of your questions, Dale, was why can't Yukon Housing Corp administer? And I was explaining this a minute ago that they're trying to get the cheapest interest rate for loans. And to do so, they have to put it a lien basically, or put it against an asset, which is your home, instead of lending money to someone personally. That's why they're not using the Yukon Housing Corp. And that's what I was told anyway. So that's my understanding of it.
He's coming back in.
Okay. But I will ask the first question you had there, Dale.
Okay, you're muted.
Hey there, I'm
Welcome
back.
Yeah,
Thank you for the break. I used
No
it
problem.
wisely.
yeah, you're welcome.
So that was a great question. As I was saying, you're absolutely right. So we got it. That's one legislation done as soon as possible. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're there.
Yeah. And I want to start this because there's an awful lot of work to do in a very short period of time. We have to meet these climate targets within 8 years. And the sooner we get at it, the faster it is. I want to work with municipalities to answer some of these questions. As far as future governments, I mean, that's another good question. That's why we want to get this legislation, the enable.
Fiber optic, eh?
Yeah.
Mm. You got to get that fiber optic line into your office there, Minister Mostyn.
Maybe if he shuts his camera off when he comes back on.
Yeah.
Camera's off now, here we go.
You heard us.
Just had a picture of him.
That's funny.
Him?
Good.
Oh, he's gone again.
Okay.
Oh. Get in.
Well, we can carry on with some conversation because the next is the correspondence from Kate White on the agenda. Proposed changes to the municipal act and taxation and assessment. I'm sure you guys have all read and heard that and what her concerns were with that, right?
Right.
Any discussion around that letter or anything you want to discuss regarding that?
I mean, I'd obviously like to see us submit a formal response. I,
He's trying to come back in.
Okay.
sorry, you go ahead.
No, I was listening to you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Muted.
You're on mute, Minister Mostyn. Can you? There you are.
I can't speak for future governments, but if a future government comes in and cancels the program, that's something that they'll have to answer for. But I believe in this program and I really want to get it launched, which is why I want the enabling legislation before the House this fall, so we can start work on this and get it to Yukoners, because I know how important it is and how popular it is with folks across the territory. I hope that answers some of your questions. I don't, I can't speak, as I said, for future governments, but I think it is important. I think the public support for this program is already building, and I think it will be quite popular and will create a lot of growth, a lot of employment in your community.
So what I'm wondering, what does that look like with somebody who has a house that's not very energy efficient, but they don't really have a lot of dollars, like kind of on the lower income side, to be able to pay their loan back, but yet they need their house to be fixed up. Is there any anything for people like that? Is there any?
Yeah, I think that's exactly why we're going this route, is that because it's tied to your local improvement charge, because it's tied to the property itself, it's not a personal loan. It means that people that don't have an awful lot of money will qualify, and because the low is such a low interest rate, the monthly payments will not be much, and they will have to go through an assessment process to see what their financial, how financially secure they are. And they will meet that threshold that will be done by community service staff in association with the Energy Solutions Center. And so once they do that, they'll go to the bank. The bank will approve their financing that way. The government will issue the loan. And then once all those steps have been undertaken and approved, and we know what the monthly payment plan and everything else is, and they sign off on that just like you would any other loan, the loan will then be tied to the property, and then it will be committed to the property. So if the person decides they want to do these energy retrofits, but they want to sell their home in 2 years, they won't be stuck with a personal loan that they'll have to deal with on that front. It'll just go with the property, and the next property owner will take on the loan and the improvement as they would. So that's the elegance of this solution.
What about, like, say, a senior who wants to age in place and then over 15 years, but they're on a very fixed income. So over 15 years, it's not saying that they could pay it all off in 15 years. Is there any consolation to be able to extend that? Or is it just firm on the 15 years and that's it? Like, is there any exceptions is kind of what I guess I'm asking.
At this stage, we haven't quite, that's a great question. I think that's something for the working group to work through with municipalities and the community services folks. I think when they come up and do the loan, they will undertake the work they can afford to fix up their homes. So, we'll do the work that they can afford. We'll assess that. If they can't do the full 50,000, maybe they can do 3,000, but it will still lower their heating costs and make their houses more affordable and better off. And that's the assessment we'll have to do with CS and the Energy Solutions Center. And then that we'll find a way that they can, a threshold that they can afford. And that will be the work that's done.
You talk about Yukon Housing not being able to assist with the program and so that we wouldn't get the money from them. It comes from the government, right? And then the municipality manages it. So I'm just intrigued to see why Yukon Housing couldn't do it, considering Yukon Housing has been able to do, like, for grants that people have not even had to pay for within their mandate. So I'm just kind of wondering why they can't do the same thing with this and still offer a very low rate that you're talking about.
This is a recoverable loan, so we'd have to do it through a personal loan. This is a recoverable loan done tied to a property tax, property itself. And so you municipalities have control over the property taxes within your municipalities. Housing doesn't have that. So that's the one trigger. And because we're not offering it through housing, we can actually offer it to commercial properties, which doesn't touch Yukon Housing. Like, Yukon Housing can't do that. So this loan program is tied, it goes into municipalities, which is in your control. So that's why the amending legislation has to happen. And because we want to do commercial properties are a huge part of this whole program, we need to do it outside of Yukon Housing because housing can't go into the commercial sector.
Okay.
And not only that, but because we're doing it this way, the interest rates are a lot lower. If Yukon Housing issues a loan to somebody, it has to be a personal loan, which immediately jacks the interest rate to 2.25% at this time. So your minimum interest rate would be 2.5% as opposed to 0.25%.
And is that increased because of administrative costs?
Well, the administrative costs we're hoping will be covered by, like, we've got to negotiate that with YG, but we'll pay the administrative costs. We have to figure out how that looks like with working with municipalities.
Okay. And I just want to quote your letter that you said, if the legislation is delayed, there will be no action until 2023. So you're just basically saying if we don't do anything yet, it'll come due in another year.
Yeah. So what would happen? I mean, there's been some suggestion we punt the legislation, but if we do that, you're going to you won't see any work until if we brought it in the spring of 2022, we're going to lose the next construction season. Like, we're just losing time. And that's what we're hearing globally, aren't we? We're seeing, we need action on climate change, but the deadlines keep slipping. Every action we try to put in gets punted down the road, and we lose year after year. We've got 8 years to do this. Time's slipping by even as we talk. So we really do have to demonstrate to our citizens action on climate change. And this is a tangible effort we can do. They'll take out 12 kilotons of greenhouse gases out of our territorial production. It'll also make houses more affordable. And at a time when propane costs are starting to go up, wood prices are going up. Like, these are things that Yukoners are struggling with. This is a solution to help with that right out of the gate.
And is it going to be globally all across the whole territory, or are you guys going to start with one community and do like a pilot project or anything?
Well, I've committed to working with through a working group established with municipalities to work out the details. If I can get 5 communities on board, I'll start delivering it in 5 communities. If we get 1 on board, I'll deliver it in 1. But I'm hoping to have, and I can also do the unincorporated community, unincorporated Yukoners. So Yukoners in rural Yukon who are living outside of municipal boundaries will also be available to take this program on. So it's not just within municipalities, it's all other Yukoners as well. So there's lots of people who can access this program if the enabling legislation, that three-page piece of legislation passes the House next week.
And do you know how many energy assessors there are actually in the Yukon?
I'd have to go back to the department to find out how many we have currently. I'll have to find that out.
Right. Thank you.
I believe it's 4, but I'm not sure. But I think 4 comes to mind.
Okay,
So
thank
we may
you.
have to.
Those are great questions. Thank you, Danina. Councillor Burtis, who isn't here, had a couple of questions, Minister Mostyn. First one being, can you just give us a brief explanation why you feel that YG doesn't want to administer this? Or is it, again, I don't want to spin the wheels again, but it's more towards putting the loans towards a house and tax collection, which is why you're leaning towards municipalities administering this, correct?
That's exactly right. In 2000 and when we announced this in a throne speech, my colleague, Minister Stryker, started looking at this in 2019. Municipalities said do it through Yukon Housing. We did a research project that looked at administering it this way or through Yukon Housing. The benefits came out overwhelmingly in favor of this approach with municipalities. And as I've said, some of the things that came out, you couldn't do commercial properties through Yukon Housing. The interest rates would be a personal loan, which jacked the interest rate, which made it less affordable to Yukoners because it wasn't tied to a property. It was tied to an individual. There's a reluctance for people to take on that financial liability. It's certainly at higher interest rates, especially if they were thinking of selling their home in a couple of years. In this way, if you're willing to sell your home in a couple of years, you can still enter into this program because you know that the financial burden is going to transfer to the new homeowner, not yourself. So it's a lot more, people want to do it. There's fewer barriers to taking this on, and there's more benefits to your property. So all of these things were why when it came back to cabinet, we looked at this at that suggestion. And in the end, the entire cabinet voted unanimously in favor of exploring this option with municipalities because the benefits to Yukoners are so extreme. Like a 0.25% interest rate alone is a huge sway for Yukoners and opens it up to many Yukoners who wouldn't be able to get loans otherwise.
Would that percentage point stay the same throughout the program, or would it rise if inflation rises?
It's tied to the Bank of Canada rate, which is why I continually say that's what the rate is now. If the rate goes up, then you're going to see that. But if the rate goes up and personal interest rates go, if interest rates go up, this is still going to be the cheapest loan you can get in the country. And it could be far cheaper if we start to see the banks raise their interest rates, which is another reason why this is a preferred option. It protects Yukoners dramatically from huge swings in interest rates because they're getting the cheapest money available in the country.
Yeah. So a couple of worst case scenarios, Mr. Mostyn, you know, the tax lien process is very arduous, but I believe what you said in the meeting the other day was that we're only going to pay money that is paid. So what happens if someone faults on their house or they lose possession of their house? What happens to that outstanding loan?
Well, if the municipality is the lender of first resort, so the municipality is guaranteed to get all the money it's owed before the Yukon government takes any share of the potential profits from a sale of a property. So the municipality gets paid back before the Yukon government on that one.
And what
And if
would
there's
happen, what would happen to that outstanding amount?
It would fall on the Yukon government, not on the municipality.
Okay.
I mean, you sell the property. Let's say that there was $100,000 in outstanding, or let's say there's $90,000 in outstanding property taxes and $10,000 in outstanding, or $15,000 in outstanding LIC. So you're $105,000. You sell the property for $100,000. The municipality would collect $90,000 that it's owed. The territorial government would get $10,000. The other $5,000 would be lost. We'd have to eat that.
Okay. You also mentioned administrative fees, says Denia, one of Denia's questions. So, you know, that might be an added incentive for the municipalities to take this on if there was some sort of compensation, because the constant, I'm sure, like you heard all weekend, is the downloading. You know, we get downloaded lots of administrative burden. And I mentioned that last night as well. So it's more and more and more, and our administration is stretched as it is. So I just wanted to put that out to the public, make sure you know that. And I guess my last question would be why, you know, it's a tough time as new councils are coming on, and, you know, we're kind of getting, we're getting kind of pushed a little bit, and it is a good program, and I'm not, you know, I don't want to say anything negative in that way, but why? Yeah, I understand missing the work year too and missing your construction season, but you know, it sounds to me that this program still has some bugs to work out. So for it to be fully implemented properly for sustainability, so that, you know, continuing governments want the program just as much as we do now, you know, it's going to take some time. So my concern is pushing it now and not in the spring. You know, if it's legislated in the spring, but you continue to work on the program, then it's full implementation as of the spring, you know, so that's where my concern lies. You know, there's always time to make things work a little more efficiently. And that's my stance on it. So, and why would the program be null and void if it was not to be passed the spring legislature?
Okay, if the legislature votes against the enabling legislation that's currently before it, you can't bring that legislation back in this session. So you'd have to wait until the new government is elected before that legislation be retabled. So that's the problem, like it's gone and you won't have a chance to bring it back. So that's the issue there. And that's just the legislative rules. It'd be like, you know, municipalities have similar rules, motions, you know, whatever. If it's out with, you can't bring it back. I know that the Whitehorse, when the LIC process up in Hillcrest was voted down, they couldn't bring it back for several years. It's a similar process with this legislation. And so there's no way around that. The other thing is if you, I've always, you know, the issue is that, yes, nothing is ever perfect at launch. And the more, every time you do planning ahead of time and you launch, there's always issues. I always find it better to do, assess what you're doing and make course corrections and fix the problems that show up when you're starting to actually do the project. Because in all the planning, when you actually hit the road, there's always problems you never saw coming. And so the quicker we get this thing going, and the philosophy I've taken at highways and in other places is but keep your eye on the ball, assess what's happening and make the necessary course adjustments to make the program you're delivering a success. Because what happens in the bureaucracy, and I was a former civil servant, they'll take 5 years to roll something out and then it won't get rolled out. And there's no guarantees in this thing. If we wait to next spring, it may get voted out or delayed again, right? Like I've got the mandate to get the legislation through the House now. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
Because I never know what tomorrow's going to bring. I just went through a confidence motion. You know, we could have fallen, the government could have fallen half an hour ago. Like that's the type of world we're living in. There is no certainty. So let's act and get good things before the Yukon public. Wins for all. Let's work on this together and make sure that once we get the legislation passed, we'll have the authority to actually build this program together and deliver it to Yukoners in a way that makes sense for you, makes sense for Yukoners, makes sense for the Yukon government.
That's great. If you don't mind, Minister Mostyn, from the administration side, Cam had a couple questions.
Absolutely, Cam. Hi.
Hi, how are you? Thank you, Your Worship. So just a couple of questions. So if somebody is approved, what happens if the upgrades are done and they don't meet the energy standards that they're supposed to when all the work is done and the money's spent?
Yeah, so we'll have to, we're going to have, and that's a YG issue. YG is going to be administering this program, so we're going to have to keep an eye on the retrofits that are going ahead and monitor the progress on the jobs. That's something that the Yukon government's going to have to do, and we'll have to. We won't pay out the bills, though. I mean, the money doesn't flow until we can't. We're going to have to keep an eye on the jobs as they're progressing and make sure the work is being done and that there's no fraud or anything else. And that's a check and balance that the Yukon government's going to have to perform.
Okay, yeah, because that sort of flows into my next thing is that, you know, a lot of our community people that would access it are low income and wouldn't have the money to pay those bills up front. So what's the checks and balances on that? Because if the rentals have to be done, contractors want to be paid. If they got to wait for somebody to come in and inspect before they can pay those bills, it's sort of like the dog chasing his tail around, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, the money is going to have to be administered by the Yukon government for work performed.
Okay.
There will be an upfront financial assessment of the person. And then we'll have to talk, make sure that they're using the proper contractors, that type of thing. But we will be assessing the financial status of the people getting these loans. They will have to sign documents with YG. We will look at what they're financially able to carry in terms of debt and all these and other things. So they will have to go through a process like a bank loan process. The benefit is that the interest rates are low, and because it's tied to a property, there's a lot. And the interest rates are low because it's tied to the property, and so that allows us to have some collateral for the loans.
Okay.
But this gets to how do we work with the municipality to make sure we're collecting. And I know how difficult that can be, especially in small places like Watson Lane, which is why we have to talk about these issues and see what solutions we can come up with to ease that burden on municipalities.
Okay, yeah, because my fear was that if somebody didn't follow through and the work wasn't done, then then you guys have given that money, so that's going to end up on the tax as an LIC for work that doesn't meet standards. So then the bang for the buck through the tax lien process doesn't work out, right?
Yeah. So have you had any of those problems with the local rural well program or with the rural electrification program?
You can't even compare the two, Minister, because the fact that we have nobody on the rural electrification program, and we've only ever had two under the rural well program, and one of them is myself. So, and the other one is another YTG family.
That's also a little bit hard to meet the criteria for that
Yeah,
program.
and it's hard. It's that assessed value at the 20% of the assessed value. Going through our tax assessment role, it makes it so that way a median for majority of the people that need this program in the community, their properties are only worth 100,000 or less. So that puts they're only eligible to access 16,000 to begin with. So the valuation on those houses doesn't really change that much. So then my second question is the tax lien process, because that's bone of contention of administration for a long time here. We've been dealing with a lot of tax lien processes. It's a long, arduous process that really consumes my staff's time. And, we're looking at, 2-year process, which has so many steps and balances and checks and balances and goofy things that it's an old process. And if you're opening up the tax lien assessment section to get this through, why not look at the tax lien side of it as well? Because that just streamlines it for everybody going forward.
Yeah. No, that's I know that we've talked about that when I was last down there too. And so I appreciate your position on this one. I think we really do have to look at what sort of resources the rural municipalities like Watson Lake need to administer these programs. You've gone through a lot of this. You're very experienced with this, and I know that you have flagged this with me before. So I think we really do have to sit down and find ways to address your concerns when it comes to the tax lien process and your experience on that down in Watson Lake.
Yeah, and
So
Mayor and Council had talked about bringing that to UIC as a resolution, the tax lien process. So that's just something to keep on mind. And then the other, I had one more point. It just floated away.
I think Lauren had one more.
Yeah, sorry, I did think of it. Your worship. So the other thing was, Watson, Dawson, and Whitehorse are sort of their own anomalies, because YG prepares the tax roll, all the tax paperwork, and does all the work for all the other municipalities. So for the three of us, that extra little piece of administration burden is the fact that we have to prepare our own tax roll and do all those extra steps, where YG covers that for everybody else.
okay.
So when you look at it, the $33 a year we get per application, when we have to prepare the tax notices and all that stuff at a dollar rate, if it goes absolutely nowhere.
That's a really good point, Cam, and I really think I think that's something we have to work through the working group. And I think we can come to, that's where we have to address these concerns. And I think we talked about we really want to streamline some processes. So maybe there's ways we can work together and expose some of these issues that you're having, and find ways working together to resolve them. I mean, that's really what we have to do. And I understand that's a problem for both Dawson and Watson Lake and Whitehorse. And so let's find a way to figure that out. I know I was talking to Dan Boyd. He had the question about the 10% fee and who gets that. That would be something that the town of Watson Lake would collect if there was a default or something. You would retain the 10% fee that you currently do. So that on the LIC.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Minister. I have a couple more questions. Actually, two quick questions and one comment. So I'll just start with a comment. I'm just concerned about the cost of housing after this debt is added to the price of like the cost of the home. So like if the debt carries over to the new owner along with the mortgage, I just think that's something to keep in mind as well, because obviously we don't want costs to be any higher than they are. My questions now are regarding the $500 fee or whatever it ends up being in the end. Is that fee being put onto the person getting the loan, or is that being paid from YG to the municipality?
It's, my
Like, is that-
understanding is
Sorry.
that's a fee paid to the municipality from YG. That's a fee that we'd agree, that YG would agree to pay. It's similar to how the, we deal with other fees we're paying to municipalities.
Okay,
So it'd be,
added onto that loan. So my next question is, will there be a time limit after the energy assessment is done that the work will actually have to take place? And the reason I ask that is because we do have a serious shortage of contractors in Watson Lake. Like we have one who does all of the work. So you keep talking about streamlining and moving things quickly. I think that's almost impossible here, unfortunately. So I'm wondering if there is a time limit after you wait to have your assessment done, you have your assessment done, is there a time limit before you have to have the work completed? Because I think it might be hard to meet those timelines.
that's a really good question. And again, the program doesn't really exist yet. We would have to work on that issue as we roll the program out. I think this program may start to draw or encourage more people to enter the contracting field. So that might actually help draw more people into the field, because there will be work to be had. As far as the property values and the cost of the housing goes, what we're talking about is improving homes, improving their energy efficiency and the whole bit. And there's no doubt that those improvements are going to increase the value of the home, and perhaps that, but you're getting a better home out of the market. I don't think we want to ghettoize the territory and not have this stuff done. There's a lot of homes that need those improvements, and the housing values are going up anyway. So let's at least get some bang out of the buck and get those houses more efficiency, saving energy, saving costs on energy going forward, and having a better home out of it at the cheapest interest rates in the country. I mean, you're getting the improvements done at a rate far below any mortgage you're going to get, right? That money is cheap money.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much.
Well, I guess, along with Lauren's comment about the increased value of the house, so that is understandable, as I'm sure, I don't know if you've heard, but many of the municipalities have a difficult time getting a mortgage. So, it's sometimes difficult, right? But, but anyways, Minister Mostyn, we really appreciate your time. If you'd like to stick around, we're going to deliberate a bit more, come up with a consensus on our stance. But we really appreciate you coming at short notice and taking all of our questions and taking that time. So thank you.
Mayor and Council, Your Worship, thank you so much for your time tonight and for accommodating me. I really do appreciate the opportunity to address this program and talk to you directly. That means a lot. You have my phone number, Mayor Irving, and so please, if you have any other questions or you really want anything else, please give me a call, and I'm happy to set you up with my officials in CS to answer some of the deeper questions. And try to move this thing forward.
That's great. We appreciate it. It's great.
I've got another meeting, so I will head off, but
Okay.
Thank you so much. This was longer than 10 minutes.
Yeah, no,
Appreciate it.
who would have thought?
Fiber in the home.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.
Good night.
Good luck tonight. Bye-bye.
All right. So you had it, very thorough discussion. I think lots of those questions are great questions, and lots of them are kind of more about administering the program as much as it is the legislation.
The other question that I was going to ask was whether or not they had put any thought into actually creating a position specifically to administer those things. But he kind of answered that with the whole Yukon housing bit somewhat, because I've always been kind of curious about that since they do create jobs every year. you know.
Mhm.
Anyway. Sorry.
Well, I'll just quickly go around the table and kind of get, if I could, an opinion or a idea of how you'd like to see this carried out, because we would like to reply with regards to the Better Building Program to the Yukon government on our stance on it. So we have to formulate something, whether that be, you know, personally, I'll give you my personal, well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna go around the table first. So go ahead, Lauren.
I have a split opinion on this because I feel like on one hand, like I was able to attend the AYC meeting along with yourselves on the weekend. And we heard from Kate White that in actuality, if the bill is defeated now, that it can in fact come back in the spring. So that's not, I don't think necessarily accurate, what Minister Mostyn was saying. But so I feel like I'm torn. I really am. Just because I feel like we have obviously had things in writing from government before, and we've had promises before that we'd be included in certain processes, whatever, and not just only with the municipality, but I've experienced it in other situations as well. And I don't have any trust there,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So I kind of am leaning towards deferring to the spring.
Okay.
Just, I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts,
Yep.
obviously.
Thomas, Councillor Slager.
Yukon Housing Corporation is so freaking inept. Giving them one more thing to play with is just like,
But I was thinking like a position, not necessarily, I mean, as an extension of that, like I thought, you know, that could
even
work in
that
this
is
office or
just-
something, but
I
anyway.
don't know, I
just
hope that the
happens.
government doesn't take any sort of like, if they're gonna do it, but do it right. Don't understaff it, don't, you know what I mean, like, if you're trying to get, you know, money into people's hands to help, to truly help them and not just look good for a photo wall, do it. But at the same time too, like even with Danina there, ordered it in June, showed up in November, like that's 6 months, that's.
And then if they say you have to have the work done now in 3 months or whatever, or you have to have a new assessment done or something like that, I don't know. That was my concern.
They need to, I'm in favor of it because it helps people out great, but like, you got a hole in your roof, you wanna fix it now, not like, you know, get an assessment, wait for this, wait for that, wait for a quote, get another quote, do this, you know, and like 3 months later, you actually get to fix it, like, it needs to be streamlined, or at least like some thought given into like the boots on the ground thing, not just the idea.
Yeah.
That's all.
Councillor Paquette.
Kind of torn as well, like Lauren is. I think there's a lot of questions. He already said here that it would be no action until 2023, which we have in writing from him. And so I disputed what he was saying from what he had written here. You know, they talk about having like a committee, you know, I mean, that's not saying that they can't sort of get things somewhat a little bit more organized before the program lays out anyway. And even if they were to pass it now, I mean, the assessors need to come. We have 4 assessors for the whole territory, like right then and there. It tells you the program is going to be slow moving anyway, because they're not ready.
Sorry, just to
Have the people in
I
place.
apologize, but just to interject for 1 second. It's also been said from numerous people that this program is already created and has already been advertised. So I feel like it's already like
Ready to go.
ready to go. So that's another reason why
It's a different.
You want to finish? Sorry.
sorry, Janine, I apologize. Go ahead.
Didn't finish.
No,
the
and that's,
thought.
I mean, that's good information to know, but I just feel like we're being really pressured,
Mhm.
you know, and I feel like if we had just, you know, more time to think about it, more time to sort of digest it, it would be a lot easier for you to be able to be like, oh, okay, this is, I agree. Like, I mean, we had an assessment done on our home because I feel like we need to have, you know, our homes to be more energy efficient.
Mhm.
Totally. And I agree with the program, the thought of the program, and, you know, but somehow I just, you know, when we think about people actually potentially losing their homes, that in itself is really scary, you know, because where would they go? In our community, there's no place to go. You know, Yukon Housing there. So then we end up what? So then what do we do with these homeless people that now that we've taken their home away from them, and not, maybe that might not only happen with 1 or 2 people, but still, it's a hard thing.
Sorry, Danita, but it would have to go through the assessment. If people can't afford it, it won't be lended, right? Like, it's still a bank, it's still a loan. You're still gonna have to go through that process. If there's any question whether they can get that money or back or not, you know, it's still a loan. It's still a process in lending that money. So you have to give some sort of confidence in that process.
Things can happen to anybody within 15 years, right?
That's
And that's the thing. And so.
One of the other counselors from wherever said at the meeting as well, like making a decision and being forced to make a decision that's going to affect the municipality and the homeowners for potentially 15 years, to be forced to make that in a number of days is, well, I don't know, unfair. Quite
And
frankly.
you're tied for 15 years.
Yeah.
You're tied. So even if, like, I just kind of did a quick calculation, with no interest on it at all, but over 15 years, if you got the full 50,000, that's like $300 a month. So you have to be able to afford to pay that over and above, and your energy costs, it would probably save you a significant amount of money. But like I said, things can really change in a short period of time for some people. And so I'd hate to have somebody, have to go on disability or something and then not be able to afford their home. And then now they've lost their home as well. And so, just thinking of things like that.
fair enough. Counselor Burtis, do you want to try and turn your mic on and give us some thoughts? Maybe.
That work? Does it sound all right?
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
I just feel like I love the program itself, but I don't like how it's on the town for collecting it. Like, I don't like how it will use up our administration to try to make sure that it's all in place without having any sort of extra funding to the administration, or like to hire somebody to be able to help do the collection of that, or the paperwork that comes with doing that, as well as I don't like the lack of planning. Like, I know he wants to just get passed in legislation, but like, it just seemed like there was too many, we'll have to plan that out, we have to hash these out. And I don't like that, just because like I want to make sure that I'm nervous that we would have as much input as we need to hash those problems out, instead of just saying like, well, roll it out, this is how it's going to be done, and we've already approved it and we don't like it.
Yeah. Fair comments.
Mhm.
So gathering information and general discussion, I really do feel like we're feeling the pressure to push this through. And I don't think it's fair for the new councils, and he may have mentioned that other councils are in favor of it, but what are they in favor of? I'm with you, Lauren. I'm not 100% trusting of the situation we're in. And I also, like Dale just said too, like, why isn't this program so much more deliverable? If they're so keen on pushing these legislation right now, this program should be clear cut. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts.
This is exactly how it's going
Yeah,
down.
this working group should have been done before now.
Mhm.
That's why I think, like, I don't understand why we can't even, we can suggest in favor of the Better Build program, but we would like to see a Better Build program delivered to us before we'll have full confidence in administering it in Watson Lake.
Here, let's change all this legislation that allows us to just do whatever we want that fits within those.
And I don't see why we can't work on that for 6 months and hit the ground running in the spring. If everything is in place, ready to go, legislation passes spring, let's build. We're not going to have contractors here for 6 months. How many people are going to want to take this on in the next 6 months?
Yeah.
And also we don't want to miss the opportunity for Watson Lake.
You have 8 years to do it.
Yeah, I guess, but do you though? Like, you might have 8
I think
years.
other people, just back to the whole pressuring thing, like, I feel like, other people have said this, they've been working on this for how long? And now just 8 days until it's supposed to pass, we're just feeling the pressure. It's not fair. And something else I was going to say. It would be nice to find out exactly what the legislative process is for real. because we have two MLAs or one minister, whatever, telling us two different things. It'd be nice to know for real. And I don't know if maybe Mike knows anything about that, or if there's somebody who we can get that from or whatever, just for the sake of knowing, because I think somebody is misinformed as far as bringing it back when. So anyway, and then to be using that as a pressure tactic.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Any comments from administration?
No, I just think that whatever, it's a very good program, lots of potential. But from administration, I'm just a little weary when you've been trying to hold us accountable for budgets and we're running such a fine line to begin with, that we're not set up. Council doesn't set up administration to be more in a loss situation.
And how long have we been asking them to review the tax lien process? And it hasn't happened. And now they want something from us. They want it in 8 days
Well, and part of.
or whatever, less now. So it's frustrating.
They only want to open up certain sections of the act. They don't want to open up the whole thing.
And that's something that's been affecting us for a long time and will continue to do
And
so.
we're one of the few communities that actually does or has been actively chasing tax liens. So maybe a lot of the other communities, maybe everybody's paying them. I don't know.
Mhm.
But we seem to be the anomaly, Watson Lake, where we're chasing all these tax liens, and we have a bunch more coming up now. So I know the amount of time that it's costing us and the amount, even the amount we spend on having the sheriff serving documents, which is $50 every time we have to have a document served. So it doesn't take long for that $33 to disappear into the wind. And sure, you can add those costs onto the sale of the property in the end. But, if you got a trailer that's valued at, $80,000 on a tax assessment and it gets $16,000 worth of work done to it,
Yeah,
then you still have a trailer that's not worth $100,000.
that's right.
So.
Well, we definitely, thanks. Yeah,
Thank you.
it is a tough spot to be in, but we have to formulate something. And we called this meeting for a response, right?
Give a motion.
We need to have a motion as to how we want to proceed with regard to the Better Build program. Do we want to request them tabling till spring with the Better Build program and discussions? Do we want to just, do we have the confidence to give it to them? Or do we say nay in entirety?
I want to see the program go forward. I just want to say that. I am reluctant about some things. Sorry, so you want to I'll make a motion if you want. Or what, you ready for that?
Sure, yeah, sure.
You guys want to do
Sure.
this here? Thank
Yeah,
you.
well, let's hear what your motion will be.
Yeah, I'll
Go ahead.
okay with your motion.
Yep.
So what do you want a motion?
I would like to make a motion to respond to Kate White's letter saying that we requested table the motion till spring, the bill till spring.
Thank you, Councilor John.
But, sorry, but that we would like to still be included in the regulations process, hopefully before that happens.
Councilor Slager, Councilor Danina Paquette. Need a second for the motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Councilor Burtis. Any questions?
Sorry, Lauren, when you said the legislation, what did you say at the end there? The legislative process?
I want us to be included in the regulations process because he's talking about, in the letter says that only if we pass, only if the bill passes, if the legislation passes, will he engage us in that process. It's pretty much what the letter says. There's a lot of ifs in there. Only if you guys, provide your support at this time, will this happen? And I mean, I think that's why, I'm so reluctant right now is because we don't know what anything is going to look like. And it'd be nice to have that in place beforehand. And I can appreciate that he doesn't want to do the work. It's too much work to do before knowing whether or not the legislation is going to pass. I think.
Sorry, Lauren, we have a motion on the
Sorry.
table.
Sorry.
And we had a seconder. So if there's any questions or if there's a secondary motion that someone would like to make.
Oh, sorry, I just wanted to clarify what Lauren was
I
saying.
can amend the motion as well. So
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
that's good. Just trying to be professional here. So, all in favor?
You know what? Yeah,
Aye.
Carried. So we can make amendments to that motion and we can adjust that letter to make sure that we want to. A motion was carried. I said that, right? Okay. But we want that letter to, we want to show support.
Like we
And we
do
want-
we want this to go
Really
forward.
want this to happen and we want to make it, we want to do it on our terms. We don't want to do it on
Terms of our head.
their terms.
Yeah.
And, it's only fair that we've been downloaded so many administrative issues and we've been paying for it for days and days and days and years and years. And we only have just started to climb out of a hole because of some of those burdens. We don't want it to just rear its ugly head. Appreciate all the consultation and we really want to see this program move forward. Unfortunately, at this very time, we feel uncomfortable with supporting.
For 6 months.
Yes, and we're really hoping that within 6 months, we can hit the ground running and really push to have this program be successful.
Yes.
yeah, give us a polished version of it rather than building the plane as you're trying to fly it.
Well, or
And then
Or
and saying
create
that
this-
somebody should be on the working group for that committee.
yes, but create that working group then still.
Yeah.
And let not just us, but like obviously all the municipalities be involved to provide input before you are ready to pass the thing.
How many people do you think would take advantage of this?
That's just totally hard to say, right, Councilor Slayer, because next week, we don't have anybody to do that work. And we have to wait 6 months to get an assessment done. If people know this program's coming and we can get assessments in the foreground and get those houses assessed prior to the situation, then we're way ahead of the game.
And if we can set it up so that guy can come down and do all the assessments at one time, mind you, then that question about the timeline comes into effect as well, because obviously we don't have enough contractors to do all those jobs, but
But I think as far as people wanting to do this, I think there are a fair amount of people that would do windows and doors, furnace upgrades,
Absolutely.
a wrap.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options.
Mhm.
Lighting,
yeah.
There's lots of options, especially with businesses as well. It's an option for them as well.
Can we read
Is there comments on there?
No, the only comment on there is from Mike that he would like to get clarification about the legislative process for you.
thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
And then Janice had asked if a property owner does not pay back the loan, do they lose their property? And my response was yes, potentially, as it becomes an outstanding tax and falls under the tax lien process.
See, those are just clarification issues we need too, because if that increased amount of tax goes onto your your tax payments, and you fault on your payments for that period of time, you lose your property, but not necessarily because you can't pay your taxes, because you can't pay that local improvement charge. There's more to it than that, and we don't have that clarity.
So I guess I don't understand how this process works, but so let's say for somebody who has a mortgage and all your property taxes are rolled into the mortgage already, so then you would still have to come in and pay that LIC separately as like annually or whatever.
Yes, or
It'd be separate from your taxes in that case.
with the mortgage companies actually do phone to clarify how much money is outstanding or for the tax year.
Mhm.
And what they would do is, if there was that amount, that would get added onto your mortgage amount, but it would be, your mortgage payment would be reassessed the next year. So you would pay actually double the next year because you'd be paying this year's LIC along with next year's LIC in your mortgage payments.
Wow.
Oh, would that be your first year? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be the second year, because the first year would be
Oh, okay.
captured in your mortgage payments.
Right.
So then it would take the third year for it to come back to normal, but on some people's mortgages, they had to pay a double LIC, which could pay on $100,000 house, that could add another $3,000 to their mortgage.
It's a lot,
There's a lot we already pay for our place, so.
couple $100 a month. It's a lot. Okay, well, we had a motion. we're gonna write that letter to the best of our ability. Tiff's a whippersnapper. She's gonna get it just whipper, not a whippersnapper. But that's
Pretty lady.
she is a whiz, the best letter writer in town. Okay, anyways, thanks for everybody coming out tonight. Thanks,
Thank
Mike.
you.
Thanks, Janice. Dale, see you later.
Thank you, everyone.
I need a motion to adjourn. Sorry, Dale.
Bye-bye.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Councillor Slager.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Hancher. All in favor?
Yeah.
Carried.
Right.
Thank you.
Hi.
Well then.